Over 600 kilometers off the Pacific coast of South America lies a shipwreck protected by an isolated volcanic island. Join the sea hunters as they dive and explore this World War I cruiser and reveal its extraordinary connection to the story of Robinson Crusoe and the bomb plot that nearly took the life of Adolf Hitler. Resting beneath the turquoise waters of a South Pacific island lay the remains of an intriguing shipwreck. Not only would this island paradise be the eternal home of this shipwreck, but it would become the temporary home of two famous yet very different men from two very different times in history. The first man was an 18th century sailor named Alexander Selkirk. You may know him as Robinson Crusoe. Our second inhabitant, Wilhelm Canaris, was an officer on the shipwreck that lies at the heart of this story, the First World War German cruiser Dresden. Canaris would not only survive the sinking of his ship, he would escape his captors in South America and endure an incredible journey back to his homeland, where he eventually rose to the position of head of Germany's military intelligence. The story of Dresden's sinking begins on the 1st of November 1914. The Dresden and the rest of German Admiral Graf von Spee's squadron were making their way along the southwestern coast of South America. They expected to meet a single British cruiser, but came upon an entire squadron. In the resulting clash, known to history as the Battle of Coronel, the German squadron gave the British Navy its worst defeat in more than 100 years. The humiliation infuriated the British Navy. Battle cruisers were dispatched to the South Pacific with orders to seek out and destroy the German squadron. Meanwhile, Admiral Graf von Spee, flushed with victory, ordered the German squadron to sail around Cape Horn to attack the British base on the Falkland Islands. To his horror, he discovered the harbor crowded with British warships, sent to destroy them. The outgunned German squadron fled to the open ocean, but the British fleet ran them down, relentlessly destroying them all. All but one. Now the cruiser Dresden was alone and fleeing for her life. The British squadron was intent on revenge for the defeat they had suffered at the Battle of Coronel. And revenge would only be complete when Dresden was sent to the bottom of the sea. Built as a raider, Dresden was swift and sleek, but she was no match for the angry group of British ships hunting her down. Not having any protective armor, she too would be destroyed by the British. If only they could find her. The modern hunt for Dresden takes the Sea Hunters, a team of professional divers and underwater archaeologists, to Flensburg, Germany. Steeped in tradition, the German Naval Academy, Murich, still trains officers for service in the German Navy.
So Willie, beyond housing the collection of the German Navy, what was this building?
Sea hunter Mike Fletcher tours the site with Dr. Willie Kramer, a marine archaeologist for the German government. Dr. Kramer leads Mike to the exhibit, where the light cruiser Dresden is remembered. The vessel, once a proud member of the Kaiser's cruiser squadron, now lies beneath Chilean waters half a world away.
Is this the shield of the Dresden?
Yes, this is a shield of the Dresden.
Well, that should be could become a wonderful mission for the sea hunters to hunt for the shield of the Dresden.
Yes.
And it would be on the bow?
On the bow, fixed 1 meter below the surface deck.
Ah, wonderful.
From their home base in Halifax, Canada, the Sea Hunters cross 2 continents and arrive in Chile. As they crest the coastal mountains, Valparaiso, Chile's major seaport, comes into view. Here, over 80 years ago, the Dresden and the rest of Graf Spee's squadron came to lay anchor after their victory over the British Navy at Coronel. Valparaiso is the home port of the Chilean Navy, and is the starting point for the team's ocean journey to Robinson Crusoe Island. From the heights of the coastal mountains, you can observe the city and spot the Valdivia at the naval docks, the ship that will be the Sea Hunters' base of operations for the next 2 weeks. Sea Hunters have been granted permission to join a goodwill mission jointly operated by the Chilean Navy and the German government. They will conduct an archaeological video survey of the wreck of the Dresden. The Chilean Navy has provided the mission with an assortment of deep diving equipment and trained personnel, and the use of their 170-meter-long ship, the Valdivia. Supplying the many isolated islands and remote areas of Chile's coastline is one of the Valdivia's functions. Twice a year, the ship makes a trip to Robinson Crusoe Island. On this voyage, the Sea Hunters, along with German archaeologist Dr. Willy Kramer, have been provided space and support to carry out their exploration and dive program. Robinson Crusoe Island is one of 3 volcanic islands which break the surface of the South Pacific to become the Juan Fernandez Archipelago. These islands sit 667 kilometers west of Valparaiso, Chile. Only 2 of the islands are inhabited, with over 90% of the population living on Robinson Crusoe Island. According to tradition, the island served as an inspirational backdrop for Daniel Defoe's classic novel, Robinson Crusoe. However, unlike the tropical island of gentle rolling hills in the book, Robinson Crusoe Island is dominated by sheer cliffs and barren desert-like escarpments. It now seems likely that Defoe drew some inspiration from other, more tropical locations. Many of the approximately 600 people that inhabit the island are involved in the fishing industry.
Once we had arrived, our first job was to find the shipwreck. And ask any honest explorer who knows more about shipwrecks than anyone else in the world, and chances are they'll tell you a fisherman. And that certainly has been our experience as we've traveled around the world. And upon arrival in Robinson Crusoe Island, we sought out the local expert. He had this wonderful island-built boat that was powered by an outboard motor that could easily have belonged to my grandfather. The point is, nobody knows the local waters better than the fishermen. And by simply looking at points of land on shore, say a tree or a house, and then looking in another direction and aligning himself with 2 other familiar landmarks, he could triangulate his position. And he could say, here's the shipwreck. And sure enough, he put us exactly on top of Dresden.
The object of this first dive is to place the first of 3 lines on the Dresden wreck in preparation for the upcoming survey.
Before leaving the surface, Jim and Willie suggested that a cannon or a deck gun would be an ideal anchoring point that would withstand the tugging of our little tender. And oddly enough, on reaching the bottom, there was a deck gun.
Dr. Kramer, we have a line on your wreck.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My pleasure.
88 years.
88 years it's now, exactly. And I think I'm the first German official who is visiting this wreck, yes? So it's very important to hear your report and to see what next days are bringing in details, yes?
Oh, there's a lot to see.
Yes?
It's going to be very exciting.
Yes?
After such a deep dive, safety dictates that Mike and the other Sea Hunters divers must wait a minimum of 18 hours before going down again. The team is eager to use this time to explore the island for evidence of its famous past.
This is the place that is the adventure for me. This is the place that, as a kid, I imagined. Because everybody knows the story of Robinson Crusoe.
Well, you can almost see him standing here in his goat skin, his parrot in its cage. sea battles, shipwreck, castaways. I mean, all of that.
All the legend.
In 1704, following a fierce argument with the captain over the seaworthiness of the ship, a sailing master named Alexander Selkirk requested that he be put ashore on the uninhabited island of Massa Tierra. Left with a handful of possessions, he was at the mercy of this new island world. But his will to survive was strong, and so, with resourcefulness and the bounty of the land, he thrived in his new island home for 4 long years. Finally, his bonfire was spotted by an English privateer, and he returned to the life he so abruptly left 4 years earlier. Marooned for so long, Selkirk became a celebrity of the day, and his adventures became the inspiration for Daniel Defoe's novel, Robinson Crusoe. Curiously, Selkirk's Massa Tierra was renamed, but for the character in the novel, Crusoe, and a nearby island, Massa Fuera, was renamed Alejandro Selkirk.
Yep, thanks, Jim. All set, John? All set, Alex?
Roger that, we're set.
Okay, here we go.
Can you hold this? Right now?
The wreck is in sight.
Roger that, wreck is in sight.
The remote location of this wreck, combined with the fact that it lies in relatively deep water, has left the ship little visited since its sinking in 1915. For many years now, Dresden has been closed to the public. It can only be dove upon with special permission from both German and Chilean governments.
Let me just make my way forward now. Down the port side.
But damaged, badly damaged.
Roger that, slack the diver. Mike, turn right just for a second with your head.
Roger.
Follow that line of that casemate. Look back to the left.
Hold.
That's a shell hole.
Shell hold, yes.
Look back down towards that hole you just saw. That.
Look at how damaged this side is.
Roger that, we're seeing evidence of shelling.
Yes, I absolutely agree. Look at this.
Is that a shell hole, Mike?
It's definitely been blown away. See it there? Look, you can see where it's ripped up outwards.
Roger that. There's definite heavy shelling action here, Mike.
That's an explosion from inside, ripped outwards. You're close to the waterline.
I wonder if you're in the area of the scuttling charge.
It's in the area.
Following the disaster of the Falklands, Dresden somehow managed to escape pursuing British ships by seeking shelter in the labyrinth of islands in and around Tierra del Fuego. After a deadly game of cat and mouse, she was given orders to return to Germany where she could receive repairs. Her captain, Fritz Ludecke, knew that without additional fuel, he had no chance to make it home. He decided instead to head for the Pacific in search of fuel. On March 9th, 1915, after weeks of dodging the British squadron, she slipped into Cumberland Bay on Robinson Crusoe Island. A radio message sent to Dresden was intercepted by the British cruiser Glasgow, who, along with the Kent, immediately set course for the island. Dresden's game of cat and mouse was now in its final chapter. Naval history tells us that Glasgow and Kent found Dresden and promptly opened fire, causing terrible damage aboard Dresden and killing several of her crew. Dresden returned only a few rounds before raising the white flag of truce. Captain Ludecke sent a young lieutenant, Wilhelm Canaris, over to the Glasgow to stall for time and negotiate the terms of surrender. While Canaris negotiated, Ludecke evacuated Dresden then set explosives in her hold. Once Canaris was safely off the Glasgow, the charges were detonated. The crew cheered from the shore as the cruiser slid beneath the waves. This self-imposed sinking was meant to cheat the British of their prize. On March 14th, 1915, the war ended for the last vessel of Admiral Graf Spee's cruiser squadron. For Jim and Willie, the battered condition of the Dresden wreck was raising as many questions as were being answered. The locals informed them that the cliffs around the bay were riddled with shell holes from the battle, and they set out to see if any information could be gleaned from a trip ashore.
It's almost a perfect hole. Very deep. Oh, the shell is in there.
Oh.
Take a look at that.
Do you think it's still living?
Oh, it's live, I'm sure.
Let's have a look to the other places here around the rock.
The shell is in there and it's deep. So what this suggests is that this is coming towards the end, I think. The British cruiser's in the bay. Practically right alongside the sinking Dresden, shooting, misses, it goes into this hillside. What this says to me is that we need to more precisely plot this. Yeah. We should get the help of the Navy, survey these in, and enter them on the computerized chart.
Agree absolutely with you.
Jim and Willie now have two charts for comparison. In addition to the official German Navy's drawing of the event, they now have a computer-generated model based on their findings.
Why is this chart of the battle that we know to be true, not this chart of the battle? And I think the answer is vengeance and wanting to make sure that she goes down. British cruiser sailed in and shot at Dresden point blank. When we found this, that's great. While the official record indicates that Kent and Glasgow opened fire on Dresden from the open water, what we have here is evidence that the British flouted Chile's neutrality and violated international law further by sailing directly into the harbor to fire on the ship. These shell holes in the cliff enable us to rewrite the history of the sinking of Dresden.
Canaris slipped past the British guards one night and paid a fisherman to transport him to the mainland. From there, he crossed the Andes on horseback. In Argentina, he found German sympathizers who put him on a steamship to Amsterdam. There, he secured a visa for Germany, where he reported for duty. As part of the research conducted in Germany before departing for Chile, Mike and Willie visited the former German military headquarters, where Wilhelm Canaris acted as head of Hitler's military intelligence.
When did he finally decide that he didn't support Hitler anymore?
This was in 1938.
And what was Canaris' special division called?
His division was called Abwehr. That's counter-spy.
Canaris had originally supported the Nazi government, but from his prominent position within the German High Command, he observed Hitler's cruel methods and believed the dictator was leading his fatherland along a path to war and destruction. Hitler and his Nazi regime had to be stopped. His officers informed him of the atrocities committed in the name of his beloved Germany. He continued to carry out his duties as Germany's espionage chief, while secretly providing cooperation to the German resistance. In early 1943, Canaris secretly met with the U.S. President Franklin Roosevelt's personal representatives to propose a ceasefire in the West. Canaris' proposal was rejected by the American president. By July of the next year, resistance conspirators were ready to attempt the assassination of Hitler. Admiral Canaris, though not directly involved in the plot, was aware of the conspirators' deadly intention. A bomb, hidden in a briefcase, was smuggled into a military conference and placed near the dictator. A tremendous explosion ripped through the room. When the smoke cleared, 4 people were killed, but Hitler was not one of them. A support for the conference table had shielded Hitler from the blast and saved his life. Furious, Hitler went after the conspirators with vengeance. Hundreds were arrested, including his ex-military intelligence chief, Wilhelm Canaris. Canaris was eventually transported to a special camp for political prisoners. From the castle overlooking Flossenburg, the peaceful village spreads out into the valley below. Beyond the quiet homes, the sea hunters trace the final days of this intriguing man.
Mike, Admiral Canaris spent his last living days alone in his cell here in this jailhouse at Flossenburg. And when he was let out, he was overheard to say, "All that I did for my fatherland."
Following these final words, Canaris was forced to strip and walk naked to the gallows. On this spot, he was hanged. He never attempted to sever his ties to Hitler's regime, and yet his connection to the resistance was undeniable. Although it was never proven, it is believed that his body was cremated and buried at the camp. So ended the life and career of one of the most enigmatic figures of the Nazi Reich, a career that began its rise on the decks of the doomed cruiser Dresden.
Now, I'm on a vantage point. Can you see the stem of the ship there? You see it? Just in the distance.
Roger that. That is the stem detached on the bottom?
That's my estimation, Jim. I'll just hover here for a minute. I think the water that very proud stem has cut over the years.
Roger that. You're coming right down to the tip of the stem. Roger that.
That's my feeling.
Roger, Mike. Move around. We're looking for the ornament on the bow.
Roger that, Jim. What else?
Excellent. Back up just a little bit. Perfect. Perfect.
That's the very stem right there.
Mike, you're at 25 minutes. Proceed to your line.
Roger that, no problem. Heading back.
It was our last day and coming up on the end of the dive, and we had to admit it was time to go. And although we were all disappointed we didn't find the shield, what we were about to find was even better.
Oh, look at there. You guys see that?
Oh! Oh, look at it.
Magnificent, Mike. That's great.
Whoa!
Look at that. Yes.
Yes.
Over there?
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
That's magnificent, Mike.
Yeah.
I'm ready to leave bottom when you give the word.
You may proceed. Leave bottom.
Roger that. Thanks, Alexander. Leaving bottom.
It's often not until the end of a project that Jim, John, and I really get a chance to reflect on what we do as sea hunters. And when you think back on it, we really have had some great accomplishments and great adventures with shipwrecks. And while many of those shipwrecks stem from the stuff of legend and mystery, none of them could be in a more magical setting than Robinson Crusoe Island. It's a reminder that, as adults, our need to investigate and understand the present often stems from our childhood and that sense of storybook adventure we all had as children.